here's Brodie Brazil.
Hey, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to help you get instantly better at working the radios during your next flight. In fact, if you pay attention too much here, you might start sounding like a professional on the radios. And by the way, later on, I am going to make this point. You can tell how good somebody is about to pilot the airplane if you've never flown with them before, based on the very first radio call they make before they even leave the ground. I promise, it's true. I've witnessed it a bunch of times. But first, let's jump into the radio ecosystem, right? There's a lot of different types of frequencies and controllers you might talk to, but everything I'm going to share in this video, it applies to all these different types of frequencies, coast to coast across our country, and quite honestly, globally, no matter where you fly. These are principles, practices, and procedures that are pretty standard across the board at making you better on the radio, a better communicator, get what you want out of things, but also be safe and efficient and make that same experience for everybody else that's out there flying. Yeah, there's a lot of different types of radio frequencies. You might talk to a lot of different types of controllers and others. Let's begin with best practices. Number one, I would recommend to always use standard phraseology. Now, this is kind of an aviation speak, aviation's own language, so to speak, that you can find in the pilot controller glossary, which is in the very back of the AIM. But also, if the situation dictates it, right? Just use plain English. If that's quicker, if it makes more sense, if it's more efficient, if everybody across the board is going to understand what you're saying better by not trying to struggle to find the right word or use some fancy word that makes you sound good, use whatever works the best as quickly as possible. Let me give you one example. The word abeam. How many non-pilots use the word abeam? Not many, right? But we use it all the time. Hey, I'm abeam the numbers. Like, you know exactly what that means. I think in a lot of cases, if you didn't know that word, if you were struggling to find that word, you could just say we're parallel to the numbers right now. And everybody would understand the meaning of that. So again, you don't always have to use, the polished words, but it is preferred to go with everything that's in that glossary. By the way, it's kind of like reading a dictionary, but if you actually scan through there once in a while, it can help you pick up things and reinforce things that you already know. Number two is to just use proper phonetics, right? Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, Foxtrot. Like, go through the alphabet and know all the letters. Don't be making things up on the fly. L is not Laredo, M is not Michigan. Figure out what phonetics work for every letter in the alphabet and just use that. Make everybody's life more simple. You're going to catch a lot of eyes and ears like, what? If you use the wrong ones, I'll be honest. Okay, this is an important one. Quite honestly, if we were doing it in priority, number three might have been number one. Keep it short. Less is almost always more. Can you say the same amount? Can you say the same meaning of something with a shorter amount of words? Instead of having your thumb down on the transmit button for 12 seconds, could you do it somehow to only hold that button for 7 seconds? We're trying to keep the radio frequency open to everybody else, especially in busy and congested traffic environments. Like, that radio time is super valuable. Fly through Los Angeles airspace and try talking to the SoCal TRACON. It's difficult to get a word in edgewise on a very regular basis. Like, it's regular that it's hard to get a call in there. So do your part, keep it short, less, almost always more. And on that note, number four, try not to, but preferably don't ever step on a controller or another pilot that's on the frequency. You can kind of gauge the cadence of who's going to talk when if you're listening long enough. And I guess one way to not step on people is just to twist in the frequency, dial it in, and fire away as soon as you get there. Give it a second, let it breathe, scan the frequency. Anybody talking? Okay, I'll jump in. Because when you step on somebody else, I know you don't know what it sounds like, but likely if you've been around long enough, you've heard two pilots trying to talk at the same time. And that squeal, like the way it works is so annoying and so fatiguing if it happens over and over. And then sometimes you get somebody who stepped on one person and then they both try and say blocked and then they all step on each other. It's kind of like a domino effect. Okay, on the radio, and especially if you're watching this, because I'm assuming you might be early in your pilot training, if you're a student pilot and if you are in need of some special assistance or even just the comfort that they're going to take care of you with extra care, identify yourself as a student pilot. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't lose anything from that. There's no style points to be evaluated here. If you're trying to request something specific because it's going to help your flight as a student pilot, you're not licensed yet, ask the controller for whatever it is and remind them that you're a student pilot or in some of your calls with student pilot. They'll get it. It's not the first time they've heard it. They're going to have an extra set of eyes and ears out there for you just knowing that situation. There is nothing to be ashamed of. Also know when, where, and how to use the term unable. I feel like the word unable, right? If I said, I heard unable on the frequency, most pilots would say, oh, a controller said unable. You requested something, they replied unable. But in reality, I think most pilots need to learn the term unable and know that in their bag of tools, in their bag of tricks, that is something you can pull out if, honestly, you're unable to do it. If a controller gives you a request that's going to be difficult, it might compromise the rest of your flight, trying to descend too quickly, trying to, maybe extend your downwind for some reason, and you can't. I don't know if that's a good example, or maybe even make a short approach. That's probably a better example. And you can't, you feel like you're too high, or you're not ready for that, you're not configured, unable. Or an immediate departure, unable. I realize that it might not be the most optimal scenario that you can't accept the request of ATC or another pilot, but to say unable, it sends the message. I would if I could. I'm literally unable. I feel like not enough pilots are okay with saying unable, or they don't think about it in the moment. They just try and get everything done. We're all mission critical, right? Unable, there's nothing wrong with it. It'll keep everybody safe in the long term. Okay, number 7 here, the 4 W's on initial contact. So you're joining a frequency for the first time, and you're about to make a call requesting something, and they don't know you're coming. You're just kind of jumping in the pool. It's simple, the 4 W's. Who are you calling? Who are you? Where are you? And what do you want? So who are you calling? Livermore Tower? Who am I? November 1234 Alpha? Where am I? 7 miles east of the airport? What do I want? Full stop landing 25 right with information, Charlie. There you go. I just did the initial call up. So the initial contact always has those things. You can sum that up to like 5 or 6 words if you're really slick, but the bottom line is you keep it in that format every single time. That is a best practice. And let's move on to the 3 R's of radio communication. There's really only 3 kinds of conversation/communication with ATC. There's a request, like request to land. There's a readback in terms of they gave you an instruction. And there's a response to an instruction. So there's only 3 types of actual things that might take place. Now, I guess sometimes it could get casual. There might be a separate side conversation on a slow night on a silent frequency, but that is pretty much it. Okay, now to get into the must-do list. Before I said best practices, like, try these things. These will help you out. But here is a list of things that, in my opinion, you must do. Otherwise, problems will be caused. Number 1, acknowledge all communication directed to your call sign. For example, if you're getting flight following and you checked in and you gave them a heading and an altitude that you're going to fly in a general direction, right, or the destination, and all of a sudden they're calling you to warn you of traffic. November 1234 Alpha. November 1234 Alpha. And you don't respond at all. And they'll call you a 3rd time, and then they'll start to get maybe worried, but more frustrated than worried. They could still see you on radar. They've given you the squawk code. They know where you're at. They know you're just not hearing them for whatever reason. So when you get a call to your call sign on the radio, you got to be paying attention and at least acknowledge it. Don't space out on the radio. I get it. It's easy to, on a long flight, get lost in conversation, get lost in the music that's Bluetooth to your headphones. Done that. But do not lose track of the radio. Always keep one ear on the radio frequency. Okay, number 2 here on the must-do list, read back all essential information. When they give you an altitude, a heading, a clearance, a hold short instruction, hold short, runway 25 right. And sometimes it's hold short, 1234 alpha. Nope. We need hold short, 25 right. Or for example, when you're cleared for an approach, they give you an altitude, a heading, and somewhere to fly to and clear for the approach. But let's say you don't read back the altitude or the heading. They're going to want to hear it again. What's that altitude? What's that heading you're on? And cleared for the approach. Always read back the essential information that you're required to do so. It's so obvious, when you listen to ATC on a frequency and somebody reads back about half the things they're supposed to. You can almost hear the controller ready to come back like, okay, 34 alpha, I need to hear it. Maintain, 5,000 heading 050. So just understand that reading back that essential information is what the controller is looking for so that they can move on and handle other traffic. Number 3, clarify confusion immediately. I didn't hear something. I'm not sure what I heard. What's the name of that fix? What's the exact instruction? I'm not sure if I'm supposed to enter this hold this way or that way, or what was the request? Hold which direction again? So clarify anything that's confusing immediately. 99% sure is not 100. And if you do something 100 times and you're sure about it 99 and you do it for the 100th time and you just trust that, the other 99 times worked out, you don't want to be put in that situation. It's so worth your time and worth the effort. And so long as you're not clarifying over and over, and I didn't hear this, and what was that again? Then you become a burden. But to do it once in a while when necessary absolutely pays dividends. Okay, number 4, comply with ATC instructions, like unless you have an actual emergency or there's a traffic alert. There's a FAR about this, 91-123, about being PIC. The point is that if you are given an instruction, if you're given a heading to fly and an altitude to fly, there's a reason for it. You're putting yourself, other people, property in danger by not doing what you've been assigned to do. So fly the headings, fly the altitudes, go to the next spot on the flight plan or the GPS or where you've been instructed to fly to. Understand that you need to actually do what's been discussed and comply with instructions unless you have to divert because of an emergency. And that is a very real thing. When you're the PIC and you know that it's absolutely A-okay to ditch the script because you got to act now on something else, that's no problem. In fact, that's encouraged to have that type of thought process. But 99.9% of the time, comply with the instructions. You can also ask for amended instructions at any time. There's nothing wrong with asking for something different, so long as the situation and the busyness of the frequency dictates it. No problem to ask for something. And that's my last point here. Not all air traffic controllers are pilots, but some are, so they understand exactly what you're doing, why you're asking for it. They've been in your shoes before. Even the ones that are not pilots, they've heard people asking enough, and they've probably asked, why would this be a big deal to them? They generally understand pilots. So if you're asking a question, asking for a request that's not terribly uncommon, they've probably heard it before. Okay, common errors. And there's not too many things you can do wrong here besides being annoying or tying up a frequency, but these are a handful of things that happen, and I've seen it over and over. Number 1, you're just on the wrong frequency. You dialed into the wrong frequency, you're clicking in, nobody's answering, either because you looked it up wrong or when you were handed off to the next controller, you got the frequency wrong, or you left it on tower and you meant to be talking on ground or vice versa. So wrong frequencies, right? The flip over switch is a big one too. Wrong frequencies are a big deal. That's a pretty common but quickly remedied error usually. Number 2 is just improper procedures or phraseology, talking over somebody, stepping on somebody else, not reading back what you're supposed to do. Number 3, failure to comply or acknowledge radio calls. Again, that's both annoying in some respects, that's also dangerous and illegal in other respects. And then number 4, we didn't really touch on this, but lost calls. Okay, we've been talking about how to make you better and more comfortable on the radio. What happens if your radios stop working? Have you thought about that mid-flight? What would you do right now? How would you get back to the airport? Are you going to a Class Delta, Class Charlie airport? You're going to have to fly through some of that airspace. Were you talking to somebody before? Are they worried about you? Are they looking for you right now? How do you handle this situation? Were you on a VFR flight plan? It's something to think about. That's for a totally separate video. But common errors are usually how to handle lost comms, and most people aren't aware, and they don't exactly do what the book tells you to when it actually happens. But the takeaway is this, right? Working the radio is part of your flying skills. And I could often gauge the competency of a pilot, literally before takeoff, with their very first radio call. And I mean, a lot of times it was after startup, calling ground for the initial taxi to the run-up area. You can tell how put together, how confident somebody is on the radio and how it translates to their flying. Now, not 100% of the time. Some people are just a really good stick, right? Stick and rudder, they've got it. Talking to others, not their strong suit, or vice versa. There's some people that are all talk and couldn't fly a plane to save themselves. Now, as an instructor, that's what you're here to help with and protect them from themselves and everybody else. I digress. But the big thing here is you can generally see like, okay, yeah, this is going to be a good flight. This person has their act together already. They're very confident and smooth in their radio work. So if you're a good pilot controlling the airplane, you owe it to yourself, and usually one goes in hand with the other, but you owe it to yourself to be good on the radio too. It really does polish everything you're doing in the plane. It adds to smoothness. It adds to being 15 miles ahead of the airplane. So hopefully some of those tips helped you out. Subscribe to this channel for more content just like this. I've got lots more on the way very soon. And thumbs up on this video if it provided you some value. I just want you to be better on the radios. It's going to help you. It's going to help your passengers. It's going to help fellow pilots in your airplane, and also everybody out there sharing the airspace with you.